We hear constantly about the AI revolution, right? All these breakthroughs, the huge potential. But here's something interesting. PwC did this big projection back in 2017. AI's massive economic impact, trillions of dollars, and the entire continent of Africa just wasn't in their main analysis. Think about that for a second. A world-changing technology and a whole continent seemingly well overlooked.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, isn't it, is the contradiction there. Because Africa is already part of the AI supply chain. It provides, raw materials, people doing data labeling. It's an early adopter for certain AI tools. But like that PwC report showed, maybe unintentionally, its role as a major economic beneficiary. It wasn't really on the radar back then, and that's exactly what this deep dive is about today, exploring that disconnect.
Exactly. So today, we're going to properly dig into where Africa stands right now in the global AI picture. We'll look at the big challenges, sure, but also the massive opportunities. We'll examine how some key countries are tackling it with policy, which sectors could be really transformed by AI, and crucially, why working together across the continent isn't just a nice idea, it's, well, essential.
Right. And to do that, we've pulled together quite a range of sources. We've got insights from years of hands-on work in digital innovation across Africa and the MENA region, that's the Middle East and North Africa. We've looked at actual policy documents from different African governments, reports from big players like PwC. Their initial omission is kind of a starting point for us from Mozilla Foundation, the World Bank, the African Development Bank. And really importantly, we're bringing in perspectives from tech entrepreneurs, government folks, the people actually doing this stuff on the ground.
Okay, so our mission here is pretty straightforward. We want to give you a really clear picture of Africa's AI potential, which is huge. We want to understand the big strategic changes needed for the continent to become, a real player, a contributor, and maybe most importantly, a major beneficiary in this whole AI ecosystem. We're talking about moving beyond just being a source of raw materials or basic labor to being a genuine hub for AI innovation and impact. Okay. Let's get into it. Where do we even start trying to understand Africa's current AI landscape?
Well, a good place to start is usually the basics, the foundation. Yeah. And in the digital world, that means connectivity, internet access. And look, there has been some incredible progress. You take Kenya, for example. Internet penetration went from, under 10% to over 40% in about a decade. That's undeniably significant growth.
It definitely is, on the face of it. But as always, the headline number doesn't tell the whole story, does it?
No. Precisely. That growth is encouraging, absolutely. But the reality, the digital infrastructure across large parts of Africa still isn't really robust enough for the heavy demands of advanced AI. Think about rural areas especially. Connectivity can be patchy, unreliable. Yeah. It makes deploying AI tools consistently really, really difficult.
Yeah, it's like trying to run a supercomputer on an old generator or something.
That's a good way to put it. And this leads us to what some call the AI readiness gap. It's that difference between what AI could do, the potential, and the actual capacity to make it happen on the ground. A big piece of this is broadband cost. Across Africa, the average cost is about 7.12% of the average monthly income.
7%, wow.
Yeah, and you compare that to the UN benchmark, they recommend it shouldn't be more than 2%. So affordability is a massive barrier.
Huge barrier.
And then there's speed and just availability. Only around 28% of people in Africa have regular access to 4G. You just can't build a really dynamic digital economy, especially an AI-driven one, on what's often still effectively an analog foundation in terms of reliable, affordable, fast internet.
That broadband cost figure, 7.12%, that really puts the digital divide into sharp focus. It's not just if you can get online, but can you actually afford to use it meaningfully? Okay, so that's infrastructure. What about the people, the human capital side, talent, expertise in AI?
Right. Another area with, again, both real promise and some pretty big challenges. The African Development Bank estimates the continent turns out about 50,000 STEM graduates every year. That's a solid number. It suggests a growing pool of technically skilled people.
Sounds good initially. So where's the catch? Or the complexity, maybe?
The catch is the persistent and pretty significant issue of brain drain. I remember talking to a Rwandan official recently evaluating some tech programs there. He gave this stark figure. For every 10 software engineers we train to world-class standards, 7 end up leaving for jobs abroad.
7 out of 10, that's huge.
It's a massive loss of top talent. And if you narrow it down specifically to specialized AI talent, machine learning engineers, top data scientists, AI ethics specialists, that gap is even wider.
Which makes sense, I guess. The global competition for those skills is just incredibly fierce right now. It must be tough for African countries to hold on to them.
Oh, absolutely. You've got groups like Deep Learning and DABA doing fantastic work, really nurturing local AI talent, building communities, running training. But they're up against, the massive pull of global tech giants offering much bigger salaries, maybe clearer career paths abroad. It's a constant struggle to build up that strong domestic AI ecosystem when your best and brightest are often lured away.
So it's like building a pipeline, but it's got some serious leaks. The skills are being developed, but maybe not staying to build the future locally. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Data. It's always called the new oil. How does Africa stand when it comes to controlling its own data? Data sovereignty.
This is profoundly important. And the current situation honestly raises some serious questions about economic self-determination. There was a study in 2022 by the Mozilla Foundation. It found something pretty startling. Around 90%, 90% of the data sets used to train AI systems for African contexts are actually collected by companies based outside Africa.
90%.
90%.
Yeah.
And maybe even more significantly, the processing of that data mostly happens outside the continent, too.
Wow. So the very information that can unlock insights for local problems is being gathered and crunched somewhere else entirely?
Exactly. And it unfortunately echoes, those historical patterns of resource extraction. Someone at the Africa Tech Summit in Kigali put it very powerfully. Data is the new oil, but Africa is repeating resource extraction patterns from the colonial era. When you think about AI's potential to drive growth, innovation, the fact that so much African data is controlled and analyzed externally, that has huge implications for who actually benefits. It's not just technical, it's fundamentally about economic power in this new digital age.
Right. It really makes you ask who gets to interpret that data,
Right.
draw the conclusions, and ultimately who profits. Okay, so given these challenges, infrastructure, brain drain, data control, how are African nations actually responding? Are we seeing specific policy approaches emerge? Any leaders in this space?
Yes, definitely. We're seeing quite a range of approaches, actually, depending on the country's specific situation and priorities. South Africa, for instance, they've put together the Artificial Intelligence for South Africa framework. It's probably one of the most comprehensive on the continent. Launched initially in 2021, beefed up in 2023. Having looked at similar policies elsewhere, you can see they've tried to balance, pushing innovation while also thinking hard about the ethical side.
What stands out about South Africa's strategy? Any key features?
Well, one thing that's quite notable is the explicit focus on AI for social good. They've actually earmarked 25% of research funding specifically for projects tackling societal problems. And when they were developing it, I remember attending some discussions in Johannesburg. The cross-sector involvement was really impressive. You had people from healthcare, manufacturing, agriculture, all feeding in their views on how AI could work for them.
That sounds really positive, very joined-up thinking. But you hinted at challenges, too.
Yeah, the implementation. That's where the rubber meets the road, isn't it? The budgets haven't always quite matched the ambition in the policy document. And coordination between universities, industry, different government departments that could still be smoother. It just highlights that having a great policy is step one, but making it happen effectively with the right resources. That's the crucial part.
Makes total sense. A plan is only as good as its execution. Okay, how does Kenya compare? What's their approach?
Kenya's taken a slightly different tack, really playing to its strengths in building innovation ecosystems. Their strategy, the Kenya Artificial Intelligence Strategy 2025-2030, is more focused on creating the right environment for AI to flourish. So lots of emphasis on things like regulatory sandboxes, safe spaces to test new tech and developing their tech hubs, Kanza Technopolis being the big one. It builds very much on their success with mobile tech, doesn't it? M-Pesa transformed things, and they seem to be aiming for similar mobile-first AI innovation.
Right, leveraging that mobile leadership.
And they were quite pragmatic, I think, in getting their data protection law sorted out back in 2019 before diving deep into specific AI rules, sort of laying the groundwork of trust first.
Smart sequencing.
Yeah.
Okay, what about Nigeria? Huge market, lots of entrepreneurial energy there.
Yeah, Nigeria's approach, laid out in their national digital economy policy and strategy, is very much about harnessing that scale and dynamism. Biggest economy, super active startup scene. The government's focus seems to be on enabling the private sector to run with AI innovation. I've worked with some hubs in Lagos, and honestly, the AI solutions young entrepreneurs are building for local problems, finance, logistics, you name it, it's really impressive. There's also a clear push to get AI integrated into their strong existing sectors, like banking and energy, which makes a lot of sense strategically.
So maybe more market-led, bottom-up, compared to South Africa's framework.
Somewhat, yes. Though both have government direction, Nigeria seems to lean more on unleashing private sector energy.
Got it. Let's head north. Egypt. What's their AI game plan?
Egypt's strategy, launched in 2021, is definitely more state-directed. They set up a national council for artificial intelligence to really steer things from the top.
Yeah.
And talking to officials there, the focus on national sovereignty, national security comes through very strongly. They've set some pretty ambitious targets aiming for AI to contribute, I think, 7.7% to GDP by 2030.
That's specific.
Very. And they're putting significant public money into research, into infrastructure. One interesting angle, too, is their focus on developing Arabic language models and culturally relevant AI. They really recognize how crucial that linguistic fit is for adoption.
That's a great point. AI needs to speak the right language, literally and culturally. Okay, lastly, Rwanda. Often seen as a digital leader, despite its size. What's their AI vision?
Rwanda, yeah, even as a smaller nation, they have a very clear strategic view. Their national AI policy from 2022 really emphasizes getting the foundations right. First, focusing on digital literacy and skills for everyone before trying to build lots of high-end AI expertise. It feels quite pragmatic, assessing where they are now and what's needed next. And from evaluating programs there, their systematic approach to partnerships, working with international tech firms is quite impressive. Plus, they have a strong commitment to ethical AI guidelines from the get-go, thinking about human rights, transparency. That sets a really important tone.
Fascinating. So we've got this whole spectrum from comprehensive frameworks to ecosystem building, state direction, foundational focus. It really shows there's no one-size-fits-all path for AI in Africa. Now let's pivot to where AI could actually make the biggest difference on the ground. Which sectors are really ripe for transformation?
Based on, managing development projects across Africa for years, several sectors really jump out as having potential for, well, truly transformative change. Top of the list, I'd say, is agriculture. It's the backbone for so many African economies, employs so many people, but often faces big productivity hurdles.
Yeah, that makes sense. Huge potential impact there, given how many livelihoods depend on it.
Yeah.
What kinds of AI applications are we actually seeing? Are there concrete examples?
Oh, yeah, some really promising stuff is happening. You've got smartphone apps helping farmers in Tanzania identify crop diseases just by taking a picture, cutting down losses. There are better weather prediction models powered by AI, helping farmers in Ethiopia make smarter planting and harvesting choices. AI is also being used to make supply chains more efficient, which is critical when you consider post-harvest losses can be, 30, 40, even 50% in some places?
50% loss. Wow.
It's huge. I even came across a startup in Kenya developing an offline disease detection tool vital for areas with poor or no internet. And you mentioned earlier that project I evaluated in Kenya. Farmers using AI pest detection saw yields go up by an average of 25%. That's tangible.
25% is definitely tangible.
Yeah.
Okay, what about healthcare? Another sector facing huge challenges, workforce shortages.
Absolutely. Africa has a disproportionate share of the global disease burden, but only roughly 3% of the world's healthcare workers, serving about 16% of the population. The maths just doesn't add up. AI can be a massive help here, essentially augmenting the capacity of the people they do have. We're seeing AI diagnostic tools being developed for use in primary clinics, predictive analytics to try and forecast disease outbreaks, helping plan resources. AI-powered telemedicine is also expanding access to remote areas. But the key thing, I think, and what I've seen work best, is AI supporting human health workers, not replacing them. Like in Rwanda, community health workers using simple AI algorithms on tablets to help decide if a patient needs referring up the chain. It optimizes the system, keeps that human touch.
Yeah, AI as a force multiplier makes perfect sense in that context. Okay, financial inclusion. Mobile money was revolutionary, but still, many remain unbanked.
That's right. Africa led the world on mobile money, but still, something like 57% of adults across the continent don't have formal bank accounts. AI can definitely help close that gap further. We're seeing things like alternative credit scoring, using different data points to assess creditworthiness if someone lacks a formal financial history. Automated customer service via chatbots, making digital finance easier to navigate. Sophisticated AI fraud detection builds trust, too. I remember this project in Uganda, really striking. AI credit scoring allowed a microfinance lender to give loans to small businesses previously shut out. And interestingly, their default rates actually went down because the AI was good at spotting reliable borrowers based on non-traditional data.
That's a fantastic example. AI genuinely unlocking economic opportunity for people left behind by the old system. What about public services? Government services can often be slow, inefficient.
Yeah, and inefficient services really hold back development, erode trust. Digital tech, and now AI, offers ways to improve that. Think about predictive maintenance for essential infrastructure, like power grids or water pipes. Using AI language tools to offer services in multiple local languages, not just the official one. Using data analytics driven by AI to allocate resources better, maybe improve tax collection fairly. Rwanda's Irembo platform is a famous example, isn't it? Made accessing government services way faster and simpler for citizens. But again, like healthcare, AI isn't a magic bullet. It needs to be part of wider reforms to make public services better overall, not just a tech add-on.
Right, embedded in a bigger strategy for better governance. Okay, one more sector, maybe less obvious, the creative industries. How does AI fit in there?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one, often overlooked but huge potential, both economically and for, cultural sovereignty. People are exploring AI tools to help create content in local African languages, vital for keeping those languages alive and vibrant. AI can power better recommendation systems, helping people discover African music, films, books, promoting local creators. There are even AI applications emerging to help preserve and digitize cultural heritage, which is incredibly important. Look at Nigeria's Nollywood. Digital tech already blew that industry up. AI could potentially streamline production, help with translation for global reach, optimize distribution. It could really boost creative careers and get African stories out there even more.
That's exciting. AI not just solving problems, but also empowering culture and creativity. Okay, so we've talked national strategies, specific sectors.
Yeah.
But AI is global. How important is collaboration between African nations in all this?
Oh, it's not just important, it's fundamental. It's absolutely critical if Africa wants to be a serious player, an influential voice in the global AI game. Individual countries, even the big ones like Nigeria or South Africa, they just don't have the scale on their own to really compete with the US, China, Europe in AI development.
Makes sense. So where does that collaboration need to happen? What are the key areas?
Well, one big one is regulation. You've got 54 countries, potentially 54 different sets of rules. That's a nightmare for businesses, especially local ones trying to scale across borders. It gives global tech giants an advantage. So harmonizing things like data protection rules is crucial for data to flow easily. Agreeing on shared ethical principles for AI reflecting African values. Maybe common standards for certifying AI systems, especially in critical areas like health. The African Union's digital transformation strategy is a starting point, a framework. But it needs teeth, stronger mechanisms to actually make that harmonization happen continent-wide.
Right, creating a more unified, predictable playing field. What about the tech itself, the expensive computers, the data centers needed for advanced AI?
Exactly. No single African country can realistically afford to build and maintain the kind of massive computing power needed for cutting-edge AI R&D alone. So pooling resources makes sense. Maybe regional research centers with shared supercomputers, cloud infrastructure tailored for African connectivity realities, collaborative data repositories carefully managed to respect sovereignty, of course. Look at the Square Kilometer Array, the giant radio telescope project. That shows African nations can collaborate successfully on huge, complex scientific infrastructure. We can learn from that for AI.
Good example. Pool resources to achieve what's impossible alone. And what about that talent issue we discussed earlier, the brain drain? Can collaboration help there?
Collaboration is vital for tackling the talent gap, too. We need shared approaches. Things like making sure qualifications are recognized across borders so talent can move more easily within Africa, more exchange programs between universities, research labs, maybe even coordinating on curricula to make sure AI education meets Africa's specific needs. The African Institute for Mathematical Sciences, AIMS, is a great model here, a pan-African network fostering talent in maths, which is foundational for AI.
So building a pan-African AI talent pool, not just national ones. And what about influence? Can working together give Africa a stronger voice globally?
Absolutely. On their own, individual African countries often have limited clout negotiating with big multinational tech companies or in global forums where AI rules are being written. But if they can develop collective positions on data sharing, say, or investment terms, if they present a united front in those global policy debates, their influence grows significantly, making sure African perspectives are actually heard and factored in. The African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCFTA, could potentially provide an institutional backbone for this kind of collective action and negotiation.
Strength and unity, basically. Ensuring Africa isn't just having rules imposed on it. Okay, beyond the practical stuff, is there a need for a shared vision, sort of African AI identity?
Yes, I think that's crucial. We need a collective conversation about what African AI should actually mean. A vision that reflects the continent's incredible diversity, its values, its unique goals. Does that mean prioritizing AI that complements human workers, not just replaces them? Designing AI that works well even with patchy infrastructure? Using AI to actively preserve languages and cultures? Making sure everyone has a say in how AI is developed and used, not just the tech elite? Defining that shared vision needs real dialogue involving not just governments and techies, but civil society, artists, communities, everyone who'll be affected.
So, proactively shaping AI to fit Africa's context and values, not just importing wholesale from elsewhere. Okay, pulling it all together then. Looking ahead, what's the bottom line? Is an African AI renaissance genuinely possible?
I really believe it is. It's not just possible, it's a massive opportunity. Africa's AI future isn't written yet. If there are strategic investments, infrastructure, education, smart, adaptive policies, and crucially, that concerted collaborative action across the continent, then Africa absolutely can move from the periphery to becoming, digitally self-determining in the age of AI.
You've laid out the challenges very clearly: infrastructure gaps, talent retention, governance issues, data practices need work. But you've also painted a powerful picture of the potential upside, transforming healthcare, agriculture, finance, public services, boosting those amazing creative industries.
Exactly. And my experience working across Africa tells me that technology's ultimate impact. It's less about the tech itself, more about the human stuff around it, the policies, the institutions, the social agreements we make about how it's used. Africa is at this really interesting point. It has a chance, maybe uniquely, to pioneer AI that really puts human dignity first, thinks about community well-being, environmental sustainability. The choices being made right now, country by country and together as a continent, they're going to fundamentally shape the future for Africa's huge young population in this AI era.
That's a powerful thought to end on. Africa not just catching up, but potentially leading in creating AI that's ethical, inclusive, and serves its people's diverse needs. It really makes you, the listener, think about how these dynamics might reshape your own view of the global tech landscape and just how vital it is that AI development, wherever it happens, is inclusive and benefits everyone.